How's it going, everybody? It's Carpo here, and it's a beautiful day in Portland. I just wanted to make a video out front here. I don't really have a seat. I'm just kind of squatting down, and hopefully the camera is capturing the angle well enough. Outside is a beautiful place, and when summer comes, I always want to make my videos outside when possible. It can be kind of dreary sitting in the room in the winter time, and I live in the Pacific Northwest, and it's rainy here a lot. Fact is, I believe it rains more in the south, like down in Tennessee, Georgia, but they have larger storms and quicker rains where it's like a monsoon downpour and then it's over, whereas here it's kind of a drizzle, more of overcast. But even a day like today, where we have a few clouds, I mean, it's wonderful. Anyhow, I just wanted to say that. It's just beautiful. I love summer, and I'm stoked to embrace the summer, because for me it's a cycle. Some folks live in places where there really aren't seasons, so to speak. In other words, if you live in South America or in tropical zones, you may have a place where it's just pretty much tropical all the time. Having winter, having a little bit of snow, ice, is something that brings me closer to understanding and enjoying when the cup is full, so to speak. But even winter has its benefits. I love the snow, and I love to sit and warm up by a fire in the cold. But anyhow, that kind of relates to what I wanted to talk about, which is, well, hedonism. Okay, I was thinking about this today. We've all heard the words hedonism, and it's often used in conjunction with a religious connotation, such as Christians have their own version of hedonism that is based on what a Christian considers to be, a good Christian. But the word hedonism, it goes back further, at least maybe not within the literal, the word hedonism, but the root of it, the etymology of the word, it's, the idea is living in a way where you're maximizing happiness. So hedonism is doing everything you can to maximize your happiness. And, at first glance, that sounds like a great thing, of course. But I think that what happens is, that since some people can't control their excess and their intake, then what happens is all men get cast in a negative light who indulge. So let me give you an example. The alcoholic who couldn't control himself and spent years drinking, destroyed his family, destroyed his life, and then he decided to quit drinking. He may dismiss anyone who drinks and say, people shouldn't drink at all. Person shouldn't have a drop, and he may be completely opposed to it, not even allowing for the moderate user. And this isn't just a drug-related thing. This extends to all of our behaviors. Everything's about moderation. So the idea of hedonism for me is not. It's not about being happy all the time. All right. Well, I guess I'm going to have to edit this one a little bit. I started the video about 3 minutes in, and I realized I'd been talking for another 3 minutes with the camera off, and this is why I check. I ran out of space on my SD card, so anyhow, go figure. That's alright. So I believe I was talking about hedonism as I sit here and vape. I was moving on to utilitarianism, which is basically, from hedonism being the best pleasure for the self, the maximized pleasure for the self. Utilitarianism is another view where it's maximizing pleasure for the greatest amount of people. And you might call that a democracy, in a way, but really what it means is to do the best for the most people, which sometimes it gets into many philosophical issues, but it can come at the cost of a few, and that's an issue, but I'm not going to get into the philosophy of that. And abolitionism is kind of what came out of that, all those ideas. It's just the idea of ending suffering. So it just seems so obvious and basic. Sure, we want to end suffering. Sure, we want to help others. Sure, we want to help ourselves. Why do we have to come up with all this terminology for it and try to define it? It just seems like human nature, right? What is altruism? Is it something that's a learned behavior, or is it something that we have genetically inherited as a cooperative effort between humans? Through, historically, first we had to protect our children, and then we came together as couples and lived together to take care of our children. And we had to learn to cooperate in groups to protect each other and protect ourselves. And genetically, we inherit these traits. The people who are more cooperative may end up being the ones who survive. And, over thousands and thousands of generations, these make small changes in a species and bring us to where we are today. In a world where a person really can live on their own, where we don't need to cooperate anymore as much as we did. In other words, there were times, of course, when a person could live on their own as a farmer, do their own thing, and not really need much cooperation. We still needed mercantile commerce to be able to trade our food and goods, but that came after a time. But when it comes to today's world, we may need to rely on society for, our general, jobs, and when we go out to buy a car or renting a house or whatnot, but we can withdraw into our own worlds, and it makes it easier with the world of the internet to really think that we are getting out there and learning about people and working to maximize our happiness, but really we're stuck trying to find that happiness. I shouldn't say online necessarily, but rather the distractions that we've created in this world to try to bring us closer to a happiness that's evasive, it's fleeting. There is no proper definition of a hedonism that will bring you eternal happiness, because the other side of this is to understand Buddhist principles, rather the Zen philosophy that, and I've been misinterpreted when I say this, all is suffering, life is suffering. I've had long, lengthy debates about this, because the Buddhists say life is suffering, but really what that means is not that you suffer all the time. What it means is to realize that there is much suffering in life, and for all the suffering that you can't stop, the best you can do is change your perspective of what it is. So we decide that suffering is not suffering. In other words, when I hurt myself, rather than saying I'm suffering, I say I'm learning. Okay, that's just one rudimentary example. You hit your thumb with your hammer and you decide I'm not going to make that mistake again. And these are the things, the small things. But in the big picture, as people, as humans, we know that we're going to have ups and downs. And I have several different metaphors for it. And I really think in metaphors a lot more as the years go on. And I think that that's what it's all about. I think that that's what I'm starting to see as the true, I'm not going to use the word, I guess, not enlightenment, but awareness, or being awakened. It's being able to see things, seeing patterns in things, and seeing how they compare to other things. So we don't walk down the street and see everything as separate. So we can see how a tree relates to the dendrites in a neural connection, or relates to the roots in the ground, or relates to so many different things, the way the river flows, what they call dendritic patterns, and you start to see those basic metaphors, and then you see these recurring patterns, and then you start to see metaphors for life. And one of those is the ups and downs, the ebb and flow, what is the basic yin-yang. And I don't want to sit and spell it out, because it's, a very basic thing. We know yin and yang is, light and darkness, but a lot of people really think that it's good and evil, and it's not. It's understanding that there's two sides to every coin, but there's a reason why there's a little bit of black in the white side and a little bit of white in the black side. It shows that there is a little bit of everything in everything else, and you can't separate the two. But I see it as crests and troughs of a wave. You can't have a wave without ups and downs. And when you're at your highest, you can see over everything. When you're at your lowest, you wonder what's around you, and life gets confusing. And the idea is to ride those waves and to hang on to the peak, I guess surf that peak as long as we can, because we're eventually going to have a low. You cannot sustain a state of bliss for your entire life. Maybe I'm speaking out my ass by saying that. Maybe there are people who attain a state of bliss, but I'd love to hear their secret if that's true. Maybe that's just a little bit of denial on the part, because I consider myself happy all the time. But at the same time, I realize there are times when I'm feeling a little grumpy, or maybe not up to my full self. And whenever I get into that state of mind, or maybe I catch a cold or get sick, I think, I'm going to be better soon. And that is what seeing the light in the darkness really is for me. And so hedonism, perhaps maximizing your pleasure, is a good path to take. I would say I don't want to get into the religious aspect of it, because I know one of the arguments is for many Christians is that it's okay to suffer while we're here on earth, because we're going to go to a better place and live in eternity and happiness. And I find that to be very, I don't want to use the wrong word, but I feel a little bit of pity. As long as that brings them happiness in this life, that's great. But let's say some people who abuse themselves, or the ascetics in history who think that starving themselves or harming themselves is going to bring them closer to God. Maybe you're just getting off on pain. I don't know what the deal is on that, but I don't think that that's true happiness. I think happiness is living our lives to the fullest while we're here, and not trying to have all the answers. So, anyway, I'll talk to you all later, and go on with the day. Take care.
But now I know what to do. I let the moments take me for a fool. I really don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm trying to fix up the mess that I'm in. It takes so goddamn long to get it right.